Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Lieutenant Commander Cecilia Berryman. Today we commemorate the 75th anniversary of Australian involvement in peacekeeping operations. In 1947, Australians were part of the first group of United Nations military observers when a small contingent was deployed to monitor the ceasefire between Dutch colonial and Indonesian nationalist forces. In those early years, peacekeepers were generally unarmed military observers. They promoted peace by ensuring that neither side in a conflict could violate a ceasefire or commit atrocities without the world learning about it. While today the media or members of the public are often seen as filling this role, military observers with peacekeeping operations have the training to assess situations accurately and impartially, and the ability to bring the influence of their governing bodies to bear. In Indonesia, for example, information from UN military observers helped set the conditions by which Indonesia won independence. In 1950, the UN's judgment that North Korea had invaded the South was based in part on a report by Australian military observers. Australia's contribution to peacekeeping operations have since increased in size and scope. The commitment to Indonesia in 1947 consisted of just 4 officers from all 3 of our armed services. At the end of the 1970s, 150 Australian soldiers took part in British Commonwealth operation in Zimbabwe won independence. A decade later, a larger contingent assisted in UN operations with a similar role in Namibia. In 1993, Australia had over 2,000 peacekeepers in the field, with large contingents in Cambodia and Somalia, and a year later, Australian peacekeepers were also in Rwanda. In 1999, Australia organised and led Interfet, contributing over 5,000 personnel as East Timor achieved independence from Indonesia. Australians have taken part in over 60 peacekeeping operations, and 10 multinational operations have been commanded by Australians to date. Peacekeeping has not only been the preserve of the Australian Defence Force. Civilians from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, AusAid, the Australian Electoral Commission, as well as police officers from the Australian Federal Police and the Australian Protective Service have served as far afield as Cambodia, Haiti, Mozambique, Bougainville and Timor-Leste. 5 years ago, the last Australian federal police officers from the United Nations Peacekeeping Force in Cyprus were withdrawn. More than 1,600 Australian officers had contributed to the peacekeeping force over a period of 53 years, working to maintain peace and stability, delivering humanitarian assistance and liaising between authorities. Most recently, from 2019 to 2021, Major General Cheryl Pearce commanded the UN Peacekeeping Force on Cyprus. Peacekeeping is the front end of a complex, long-term process of creating necessary conditions for a sustainable peace. It is also usually the pointy end of this process, and it comes with inherent risk. 6 Australian police officers were killed serving in Cyprus, Solomon Islands and Timor-Leste. The Roll of Honour at the Australian War Memorial contains the names of over 10 Australian Defence Force personnel who died while deployed on peacekeeping operations in faraway places such as Kashmir, Lebanon, Somalia and Western Sahara, and more close to home in Bougainville, Solomon Islands and Timor-Leste. Today, we pay tribute to those who played their part during the past 75 years of peacekeeping operations. We pay our respects to the men and women commemorated here on the Roll of Honour and to those who returned home. This evening, we are honoured to welcome the peacekeeping veterans and families who join us for the ceremony tonight. We are also honoured to acknowledge Vice Admiral Jonathan Mead, Chief Nuclear Powered Submarine Task Force representing the Chief of Defence Force. Dr. Jim Miller, representing the United States of America. Ms. Vanessa Nichols, representing the United Kingdom and the accompanying delegation. Ms. Natasha Smith, First Assistant Secretary, Multilateral Policy Division, representing the Secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Commissioner Rhys Kershaw, Commissioner of the Australian Federal Police. Mr. Damien Cardona-Ons, Director of the United Nations Information Centre. General Nem Sawat, Director General of the General Department of Policy and Foreign Affairs, Ministry of National Defence, Cambodia. Mr. Matt Anderson, Director of the Australian War Memorial, and Mr. John King, President of the Returned and Services League of Australia, ACT branch. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We also acknowledge the members of the RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching this ceremony broadcast across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. Australia's Federation Guard is the tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catapult party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Catapult party, attention! Catapult party, present, on!
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Traditionally, during the last post ceremony, we read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. On this occasion, however, we will shortly deliver the valley for the 16 Australian peacekeepers who have died while serving on the peacekeeping operations during the past 75 years. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Lieutenant General Robert Nemo, Australian Army, 4th of January 1966, Kashmir. Sergeant Llewellyn Thomas, South Australian Police, 26th of July 1969, Cyprus. Inspector Patrick Hackett, New South Wales Police, 29th of August 1971, Cyprus. Sergeant Ian Ward, New South Wales Police, 12th of November 1974, Cyprus. Captain Peter McCarthy, Australian Army, 12th of January 1988, Lebanon. Lance Corporal Shannon McAlely, Australian Army, 2nd of April 1993, Somalia. Major Susan Felch, Australian Army, 21st of June 1993, Western Sahara. Lance Corporal Russell Eisenhuth, Australian Army, 17th of January 2000, East Timor. Lance Corporal Sean Lewis, Australian Army, 20th of May 2000, Bougainville. Corporal Stuart Jones, Australian Army, 9th of August 2000, East Timor. Protective Service Officer Adam Dunning, Australian Federal Police, 22nd of December 2004, Solomon Islands. Private Jamie Clark, Australian Army, 10th of March 2005, Solomon Islands. Private Ashley Baker, Australian Army, 5th of November 2007, Timor-Leste. Protective Service Officer Ronald Lewis, Australian Federal Police, 2nd of December 2010, Solomon Islands. Craftsman Beau Prideaux, Australian Army, 15th of September 2011, Timor-Leste. Sergeant Brett Kinlock, Australian Federal Police, 24th of February 2012, Timor-Leste.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
Catapult party, shoulder, arms.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
Catapult party, present, arms. vote party, shoulder, arms.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Catapult party, in words, turn. Catapult party, quick, march.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub of Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorials Development Project. And we wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.